Thanks, Jim. So I'll be filling in for John Mulcahy this morning. He's our project director. Unfortunately, he's been feeling a little bit unwell. I think his doctor may have seen some sense and ordered him off the project for a couple of weeks. So, good morning, everyone. So my name's Stavros Sachinis. I'm a project manager at British Gas, and I've been working on the CMNR project for a couple of years now. So I'm delighted to be here this morning to tell you all a little bit about the project and what we've been up to. So we've got just under an hour. And then we'll have a short time for questions. So don't worry if you don't get all the questions in, we'll be having a panel session later today. So let's kick off. So as the smarter grid evolves, the role of suppliers will be ultimately to deliver maximum value for our customers. And this can be summarised really in three key areas. Firstly, allowing customers to easily install renewable and low carbon technologies. Secondly, ensuring the grid evolves, keeping risks of interruption low, and importantly, in the most cost-effective way possible. We need to ensure that flexibility services, emerging services like demand-side response and storage, help keep the cost of reinforcements low, and the customers are actually rewarded for any demand-side management action they take. So, given the fact that customers will ultimately bear the cost of the UK's transition to a low-carbon economy, it's important that we do all we can to keep customers' bills down. But I suppose the problem we have as a supplier is that we don't actually control every part of a customer's bill. So if we look at the average energy bill up there, and that includes elec and gas, but if you split them up, it's quite similar. So in £100, 46 of it goes towards wholesale costs, £24 delivering energy to the customer's home. So we're talking about the elements that we're talking about today that might be influenced by a smarter grid. £9 goes towards government and social contributions on the environment, and £6 in tax. So we actually only control £15 of the bill, and only £5 of that is profit. And in the future, with more volatile, inflexible generation and changing demand patterns, transmission and distribution requirements for balancing will ultimately rise. And this could put some further pressure on customers' bills. So right now, customers, they can't really control any individual piece of that bill, and they actually have some quite limited ways that they can influence it at all. They can simply use less, which isn't always that easy. Or they can make some investments, sometimes costly, in fabrics of their home in terms of energy efficiency and microgeneration. So smarter grids could give customers a few more options. They can still reduce their consumption, and they'll have more ways to do this. They'll have more information via their smart meter and their IHD, and they might have some use of some intelligent appliance controls to help them. But in future, there might be some new ways that they can take control of their energy bills. They might choose to shift their energy. They might use some home automation to do this, some smart appliances. They may choose to do this on demand for a network operator, either actively or again automatically. Or they may even look to balance the demand of their own generation in their own home. So there could be quite a few more options for customers in future, and this may actually lead to customers being able to directly influence the different parts of the bill we saw earlier. So they could potentially get access directly to lower transmission distribution costs by changing when they use their energy. And they could limit the increase of these costs in future by avoiding having to pay for any unnecessary network reinforcement costs. They could get access to cheaper wholesale prices, they can enable greater uptake of renewable energy, and ultimately they can keep the risk of future supply interruptions low. So with these new behaviours in mind, British Gas is already starting to join up the dots for our customers. So for British Gas, I can get a bill that's based on accurate and up-to-date data from my smart meter. I can get a better understanding about what affects my energy use through my Smart Energy Report, which is the new product we've launched. It gives you some hints and tips on how to save energy, but also shows you your usage, your historic usage, and how you compare with others. I've got the ability to control some of my appliances, so we're already introducing some intelligent controls for our boilers, where I can choose how I heat my home, whether I look at environmental factors, convenience, cost or comfort. And I'm all safe in the knowledge that I've got some smart appliances. So we're looking at smart connected boilers, that help with our servicing. So we're already starting to see that smart meters and in-home displays are the first entry point to delivering a smart grid and a connected home. So they provide customers with real-time information on their energy consumption and provide an opportunity for real meaningful engagement. They allow for time of use tariffs. They can encourage customers to shift their consumption and save money. They can enable additional smart home appliances and energy services that can be used to improve energy management in their homes. And this is why British Gas is looking to bring the benefits of smart meters early through our Go Early smart metering programme. So as we know, the smart metering programme is not scheduled to roll out until 2015, but British Gas has decided to bring those benefits to our customers earlier. And to date, we've installed over 1 million smart meters out there in the real world. And we've had some early and quite positive insight. So 48% of our customers say they engage with their IHD on a daily basis. Well, for us as a supplier, that's better than once every month with their bill. So 51% of customers still use their IHD after 6 months. So people are actively looking at their IHDs, some every day. So 73% of customers have said they're looking at new ways, they're thinking about new ways that they can manage their energy. And one of the most apparent is the traffic light system on the smart meters. So this is backed up by Durham University's research. Customers really like this. It's a really good way to manage your energy, even with a standard tariff or a time of use tariff. And kind of importantly for us, 94% of customers have said they don't have any concerns about data privacy in the collection of their smart meter data. And again, this is reflected in some of the experiences we've had on the project as well. So overall, the Smart Meter Go Early programme is going pretty well. If we look at one of our key metrics, which is Net Promoter Score, and we look at our contact centres, it's 49 compared to 38 with our smart meter customers. So it's significantly higher. We're also seeing smart meter customers making significantly less complaints than customers with legacy meters. So overall, smart's actually looking pretty promising for British Gas. So how does this all fit in with CLNR? So CLNR really builds on our smart metering programme and allows British Gas to really start to innovate in smart grid. And as a partner on the project, our key responsibilities are the kind of design and deployment of 22 individual customer-led trials. We've had to recruit over 12,000 residential, small, medium-sized businesses, and using our Go Early Smart Meter rollout programme, we're looking to provide data for over 11,000 smart meters that are already existing in the field. And I think most importantly for the project, the key responsibility of British Gas is to provide the data to Durham and now Newcastle University on 2 of the project's key learning outcomes. And the first one is looking at customers' consumption profiles, what they look like today, what they might look like in the future with new kind of emerging low carbon technologies. And the second learning outcome, probably the most interesting one, is to look at the extent that customers are actually flexible in their load and generation profiles and what's the cost of this. So that's kind of our role in the project. And as Jim touched on earlier, a lot's been achieved so far. So we've recruited over 12,000 residential and SME customers onto the trials. They're on the trials live, and we're really proud of that. We've installed advanced monitoring and demand-side management equipment and technology in over 1,500 homes and businesses. Some of this is brand new technology that's never been deployed in the UK before. Over a year later, we've still got 600 customers on our time of use tariff trial, and this is over and above the targets that were set out at the beginning of the project. So we're really pleased with that. We secured an additional £2.8 million R&D grant from DEC, which has allowed us to subsidise the installation of 450 brand new heat pumps for our customers, which most of those have been monitored as part of the project. This includes our advanced smart heat pump, which has got a thermal store. It's an award-winning piece of equipment that we've brought to the UK for the first time. So we're really proud of that. And despite the kind of scale and the challenges of this project, some that we'll go through a little bit later, we've got a less than 3% dropout rate of customers who are actively on the trial. And that includes kind of all the communications challenges that comes with it. So we're doing pretty well. But on a big kind of diverse project like this, it's important to note that we've worked with a number of really great partners and suppliers on the way. You'll see a lot of them up there, and apologies if I've missed anyone. But I know some of you here in the audience, so I just wanted to acknowledge everyone's hard work and say, it's really appreciated by the project team. So a lot of really great partners there. But I suppose one of the main kind of reasons that I'm here today is to tell you how we recruited 12,000 customers, and that kind of story wouldn't be complete without telling you how we did it. So you might not be able to read it fully, but we had to create quite a complex but flexible customer journey. We had 22 different trials and different types of technologies. So we started off with a variety of recruitment campaigns, predominantly direct mail, but with some technologies we had to go out in the field and speak to customers directly. So depending on the type of technology that was required. So for some trials where the customers were a little bit more scarce, a lot of our recruitment success was through kind of targeted business development activities, again working in partnership with social landlords, local industry networks and communities. So off the back of our campaigns, the next step was to pick up the phone, speak to our customers, we explain the key facts of the trials, and we obtain their consent to join the trial over the phone. So this was followed up with a hard copy through the post of our welcome packs. You can see in the top left corner there, our customers affectionately call these the blue packs, and we got some really good feedback from them. These contained an information booklet about the project, a trial insert, and you can see a couple of examples up there for their specific trial, and again a copy of their terms and conditions. So I think anyone in marketing here will appreciate kind of this part of the customer journey involved producing over 70 pieces of individual customer communications, which included all the copy, the artwork, the sign-offs, the legal sign-offs, 22 sets of terms and conditions. So it was quite a big job. So following the welcome packs, once the customers received those, we gave them a 7-day cool-off period, which then triggered the installation of various equipment or tariff changes. I think it's important not to underestimate some of the complexity here. I'll give you an example of probably our most complicated trial. So our heat pump and time of use tariff trial, we had to tackle the installation of a brand new heat pump, removal of their old heating system, a meter exchange from a legacy economy 7 meter to a new smart meter. We also installed broadband for a lot of these customers who are in social housing, in some cases a brand new phone line as well. Then finally the installation of the inline monitoring equipment and some coefficient of performance monitoring equipment as well. All before we swap them onto a new 3-rate tariff. So it's really quite a complex customer journey, and some of these, I think, as well as we were best intentioned and educated the customers as much as we could, they weren't without their problems, and there were some real challenges there. So I think a key point to note for the future is the skills that we require to carry out these installations. We were looking for both electrical skills, so electricians, but as well as comms and IT. And these kind of skills aren't really readily available out in the market, so we had to train these guys. And I think this is the kind of hybrid skill that this market's probably going to need in future, and at British Gas we recognise that, and we're starting to train our engineers as well with some of our intelligent controls. So that's a bit of a snapshot through some of the customer recruitment journey. It was a pretty big job. But once the customer was confirmed up and running, and we were most importantly receiving their data, we issued them some start trial vouchers. So we offered customers £50 at the beginning of the trial when they joined, and £50 at the end of the trial period when they completed the entire course of the monitoring, which we've now extended out till 2014. So the vouchers really started signified the beginning of the trial, and then it was our job from then on to keep the customers on board and engaged for the rest of the project. So I'm going to tell you a bit about some of what we learned through this process. So overall we had a really great response from customers. One of the early nice quick wins was that we had a less than 1% opt-out from our control cell. So this was where we sent letters to our existing smart meter customers asking that they made their data available to the project. and less than 1%, it really kind of indicated to us that customers were generally happy to share their smart metering data with us as a supplier and with the project. But the stats that really kind of surprised us here was our direct marketing response rates. So we had 8% on our time of use tariff trial, where we mailed over 23,000 customers and had almost 2,000 responses, and we saw an even higher rate for solar PV. So this was really good for us. We were planning on only 1.5%. We were told that that was good for marketing campaigns. So some really good early success, and it really meant that a lot of our trials were oversubscribed, particularly our solar PV and time of use. And as I said before, we've still got those customers, the numbers we were looking for on the trials today. So another quite kind of interesting learning that we saw as we were going along. So the way we recruited our time of use tariff customers, we marketed it to half to customers who already had a smart meter, and the other half to customers that were what we call smart eligible. So they had the right criteria at that time that we needed to install smart meters. But we actually saw recruitment rates 11% higher for those customers who actually didn't have a smart meter at the time. So what we're hearing from customers is they actually saw a smart meter as an incentive to join the trial, and it wasn't all about just the time of use tariff. So the last point probably won't surprise you. It kind of comes out in a lot of customer energy trials, but saving money was the absolute #1 reason for signing up to the trials. Any other reasons, so environmental benefits, etc., were a far distant second consideration. So customers were really keen, and I've listened to a load of the calls. You know, they were really keen, and they understood a lot of these trials and the way they could understand their energy a bit better, and some new exciting ways to shift. So that was the overwhelming reason to sign up. So we're asking, how do we recruit 12,000 customers? I think the answer is offering them some new innovative ways to control their energy usage. This all sounds pretty good now, but it wasn't all plain sailing. We had some significant challenges along the way. And I think very early on, we learned we had to change and adapt our trials to reflect what we've learned about our customers. So as I said, even though our solar PV trials were significantly oversubscribed, we ended up having to get rid of and disengage 300 customers from the largest rental roof provider in the region because they weren't happy with us installing the additional monitoring equipment. So a bit demoralising. We had to go back to the drawing board, but we successfully and very quickly backfilled those customers through some successful community engagement programs and working again with some social landlords. So another area where we had to really adapt was electric heating and hot water trials. So our original intention was to look at demand side management. You know, obviously a big load on the network, electric hot water. But what we quickly found through dialing through our first 1,000 or so customers was that only 10 of them actually knowingly heated their hot water electrically during peak at all. And none of those guys had broadband, so there was no hope of getting them on the trial. So we did a bit more investigation, and what we found looking at our customers is people with primarily electric hot water heating are usually on an economy 7 off-peak tariff anyway. What we also found out interestingly was that a third of the customers we spoke to actually had gas central heating, so they were on the wrong tariff in the first place. So we quickly made sure that we called each of those individually and tried to give them some advice on what the best tariff was for them. So something that's been difficult for us as a supplier on this project, and it might pose some challenges in the future, is that we don't actually know what appliances customers have in their homes. And in the future, as tariffs start to work with appliances and the home gets smarter, it may pose a few problems, because it's not that straightforward to find out whether a customer has a heat pump, whether they have a gas boiler, whether they have electric heating. So it's one to bear in mind, and something that we really noticed. What we also noticed is that in the UK there is actually very little known about electric heating, electric hot water. Very little known about the behaviour and the actual consumption profiles themselves. Do people use the boost button? How often do they use it? Do they use it out of habit? So we decided to try and plug that research gap. So we redesigned our trials in electric heating and hot water, and rather than looking at shifting, we're actually looking to understand and plug that research gap. So Jim touched on this a little bit earlier. One of the other challenges we had was in terms of customer scarcity. And this project was designed, I think, 3, maybe 4 years ago now, And I think some things have happened since then. So the uptake of electric vehicles has been a lot slower than expected, and the same was true with heat pumps. So the delay to the renewable heat incentive meant that this market got off to a very slow start, at least for us on the project. And we found social housing a critical recruitment channel for this technology. So social landlords have often got really good familiarity with this type of technology, and they recognise the benefits to their customers. They're in a really unique position in that they can undertake large-scale domestic retrofit programs, and they can do this on a kind of clustered and community basis. They're all often looking to update out-of-date heating systems, so this was kind of an ideal market for us to go out and offer the heat pump propositions. So out of 450 installations, all but 8 of those were in this sector. So we worked with 16 social landlords across the region who identified almost 3,000 potential properties. Of these, we surveyed 950 with our engineers, and 500 of them weren't ultimately taken forward. Now, this was mostly due to technical feasibility. Retrofitting heat pumps is not always straightforward if you're going to do it properly. So we also had 100 tenant refusals, and some of these aren't really surprising. And this is despite some education and our engineers speaking to customers directly. So a lot of customers are happy with their existing heating system. They've been using this for maybe their whole lives. They're unsure about the new technology, and they were put off by the installation upheaval. And again, this is typical, I think, of heat pump retrofits. So although we had some really good kind of success with social housing, it was the able to buy market where we had some challenges. They were far less responsive to this technology, and we actually had to really broaden the target region for some of our smart heat pumps. So we had to go outside of the Northern Power Grid region, and we actually looked nationally. And even with significant subsidies, we still struggled to find customers who were able to pay for this technology and had the right kind of properties to fit some of these kind of quite large heat pumps and thermal stores. So on the able to buy side, our engineers carried out 85 3-hour surveys, which resulted in only 8 sales. So I think we found it quite challenging to service a national demand for this relatively complex technology. There's a lot of effort that goes in to even get a sale. And as I said, social housing and community partners were really key to this technology. So for me, I think heat pumps, they are really great technology, but it could be some time before we see them in sufficient numbers to play a real significant part in smart grid. But I could be proved wrong, because they are really well suited for these clustered kind of local mass installations through social housing. So I've talked to you a little bit about customer recruitment. Now I want to take you through the customer trials and tell you a little bit about some of the services and technology that we're looking at on the project. So after that, I'll give you a bit of a snapshot of some of the early results we were talking about as well on time of use. But we've got a lot of trials. So we've got 22 trials. And summarised, trials are in 6 different technology types. So we've got smart, general load, micro CHP, electric vehicles and heat pumps. And across these technologies, we're looking at 4 key different types of demand side response. We're looking at time of use tariffs, what we call restricted hours, direct control, and within premise balancing. And I'll talk to you about each one of those individually shortly. So in addition, we've got a range of control cells, including our big 9,000 customer smart meter trial. We've got a detailed disaggregated load trial where we're looking at individual circuit and appliance loads. So I understand we've got 150 customers on that, and I understand that's one of the biggest trials of its kind just on its own, and that's one of 22. We've also got this trial structure replicated on a smaller scale for small and medium-sized businesses, where we're testing the same things. So time of use tariffs, restricted hours and direct control. And I think it's fair to say that some of these have been easier to populate than others. And none of them have been without the challenges, but we have learned a phenomenal amount, even from the most basic smart meter ones all the way to the complicated heat pump time of use trials that I spoke to you about earlier. So to take you through the different types of demand side response we're trialling, The first type is our time of use tariff, and for us this is one of the most important trials, particularly as a supplier on the project. So we've called this our off-peak saver 3-rate tariff. It's a 3-rate static time of use, which was designed to encourage behaviour change to shift load away from the peak periods. It's based on an estimated 2020 cost profile, similar shape today but with a higher differential between peak and off-peak periods. But it's been scaled back to reflect today's costs. So the 3 rates are calculated by applying a percentage difference on British Gas's standard tariff in the region. And this is what we explain to customers. So we've got a day rate between 7 AM and 4 PM at 4% discount on the standard tariff. We've got a peak rate that's almost double the standard tariff at 99% more. And this is between the peak hours of 4 and 8 PM, which was the key times that we're looking to tackle on the project. And a night and weekend rate of 31% discount. As well as that, the tariff also incurs a standing charge of 16p. So ultimately, the tariff offers customers 20 hours of reduced rate electricity on a weekday. And once again, on the recruitment calls, customers got this immediately. And they're already trying to think about on the phone conversations with the call centre agents, different ways that they could fit that into their lifestyle. So just to explain quickly, there's the different levels on the graph. This reflects some changes to the tariff we had to make last year with our price change, where we reduced the standing charge from 25p to 16, but increased the standard rate. So we've had to deal with a change partway through the project. So that's the time of use. Getting a little bit more complicated now. We looked at our peak electricity saver, which is the proposition we've offered to customers to test restricted hours. So this is a combination of time of use tariffs as well as some appliance automation to kind of help customers reduce their usage in peak and also reduce the load on the network at the same time. So we've done this with 2 different types of technology. The first is a smart washing machine, which has been developed by Indosit's innovation team, and the functionality we've been working with a company called Greencom Networks. So the smart washing machine allows customers to set an automatic schedule, which will aim to complete the wash cycle at the cheapest time possible, so it knows which tariff you're on. Now, we haven't connected the washing machines directly to the smart meters for the purposes of this trial, but in future that's the way that we would implement this. So the other smart technology we're looking at, I mentioned briefly previously, is a smart heat pump from a company called Neura, which again we've developed some of the functionality for the UK with Innosol and Greencom Networks. So the functionality allows the heat pump to cycle down using hot water built up in a separate 300-litre thermal store tank for periods of up to half an hour during peak periods. So it helps to reduce the load on the network. But I think quite interestingly with this one, there's very little impact on the customer. We should in theory be able to do this without the customer even noticing and with no impact on the thermal comfort of the home. So it's important to note that both these appliances have customer overrides. So if they switch on this functionality, they have the option to switch it off. And it means the customer's always in control. So this was a decision taken by the appliance manufacturers that we spoke to, not only Indosit, but others we spoke to as well. And it's one that we as a supplier support on these trials and with this technology. We do feel that customers have to be in control and they can't just give up full control of their home appliances. So the next one we've got is our implementation of what we call direct control. This is our peak energy supply manager proposition. This trial is primarily for the benefit of the network operator. It allows for us to call an automatic or manual reduction or restriction of a single appliance for a number of specific times during the year. So we kind of went back and forth a little bit on this one, and what we agreed as a project team is that this would occur a maximum of 15 times per year. It'd be limited to 1 interruption per day, and it can occur on 10 consecutive days. And really this is to deal with potentially if there was a fault on the network and it maybe took a few days to sort it out. So each interruption can last up to 4 hours, and it's likely to occur in peak periods only, and that's probably the time where the network operator would require it the most. So in practice, if you think about the last one, this is almost kind of a dynamic version of the restricted hours trial, and the functionality on the appliances is very similar in implementation. And similarly, we've got a customer override on this, again, without penalty. So if the customer doesn't want to use this, they don't have to. It's important to note on this trial in particular that we haven't offered any specific financial benefit to the customers if they take this up or if they don't. It was a conscious decision taken by the project team, and it was really due to the uncertainties around the value of these interruptions, and that's something that we'll look to model and find out as the project goes on. But we thought if we just put some arbitrary price, it might influence some of the learnings. So we thought there was sufficient benefits alone in the behavioural learnings that these trials could give us, given the quite unfamiliar nature of this kind of proposition to customers. So for this trial in particular, we've had to develop some new ways of working to deliver a functional DSR solution. Now this diagram is not supposed to represent any kind of market models or framework or anything, but it is an illustration of how we on the project have kind of looked to deliver the DSR trials. So very simply, you've got the network operator, Northern Power Grid, who has specified the requirements, and they set the demand. Now, in future, this would also include some kind of price signal. The DSR operator, in this case played by the CLNR team, so Northern Power Grid and British Gas working together, will call the response, and we'll do this kind of in the background in a kind of trialled way. So the DSR supplier, in this case British Gas, we call the response from the customer, and in turn we reward the customer for any action that's been taken. And in future, again, there had to be some kind of financial mechanism to do this. A comms provider, in our case, Greencom Networks, using their smart grid platform, communicates a requested demand directly to the appliance, and again, in turn, communicates back to the supplier whether that's been successful or not. And we've got the appliance manufacturer in here as well, because they need to be part of the whole process. They need to provide the right functionality for the demand side management, and also make sure that the appliance has the correct communication capability. So we're currently piloting elements of this kind of system, and we're looking to complete our first end-to-end trials over this winter. So we're looking to get some good results. We've got all these appliances in the field already, and they're working pretty well. So the final two types of demand side response we're trialling is within premise balancing for our solar PV customers. So this is really looking at ways that we can get customers to maximise the financial benefit that they get from their solar PV, and to help take out any strain on the network due to any export. So the first one uses what's called an EMA unit. It's from a company called Cool Power. It's available today, and it automatically diverts any surplus generation to heat hot water. And Durham and now Newcastle University are also looking to kind of see the impacts of this technology on the network. So it's not a new technology, but it's something that's not been studied in detail. The second of these is quite an interesting trial. It's our manual balancing trial. So on this trial, our customers have been provided an in-home display from Passive Systems, which shows real-time information on the PV's generation, usage and export. So the idea of this is to really try and encourage customers kind of on the spot to use the energy when they're generating it. And it's kind of an interesting trial in itself, because it's going to give us some key learnings on the effectiveness on IHDs in general, using kind of different displays and giving them some information about their microgen. But it also might give us some insight into how a customer might react to a real-time pricing situation, which could be a possibility in the future. So that's kind of a quick blast through our different types of demand-side response. So next I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our early time of use results, which are some of the first results we're getting from looking at the data. It's one of the trials that's been going on the longest. And this is based on our entire time of use tariff population, and it looks at the first 6 months of the tariff. So early results point to some pretty positive responses on time of use. We've seen behaviour change. We've seen the behaviour change we were looking for. On average, customers appear to have reduced their consumption during peak periods and reduced their demand overall. The behaviour change appears to persist over time, so it wasn't just at the beginning, it didn't just drop off. And we've seen some reduction in consumption at weekends despite no price incentive. So we've done some surveys as well. 94% of customers found it possible to shift their energy usage, so they say. It's always interesting to see whether customers actually do what they think they do. 93% of customers were interested in staying on the tariff. 95% of our customers said that when the trial's over, they'd actually rather have a multi-rate tariff than go back to a flat tariff. And 83% of our customers expressed an interest in the idea of a smart appliance that might be able to automatically schedule according to the tariff. Now remember, these aren't the guys who are on the appliance automation trials, so I think it's all quite encouraging for us. So wouldn't be complete without some graphs. So we did notice there's some noticeable change there. So if we look at the graph on the left, this is our control trial of just under 9,000 smart meter customers versus our time of use trial population of 642 over the same time period, and it's showing their average weekday consumption. So you can clearly see a noticeable change. So on average, we've seen customers consume 3% less overall, and they've reduced their peak consumption by 10%. So it really is actually what we set out to do on this trial and what the tariff was designed for. And I think what we'll be looking at a little bit down the line is whether that 3% overall reduction is incremental on top of what they may also be saving with the smart meter anyway, because half of these guys had a smart meter for a year or more before the trial. So the graph on the right, we can see that customers still reduced their energy consumption a little bit on the weekends, even though there was absolutely no price incentive. So it looks like they're making some real behaviour change and carrying this through potentially into the weekend. So I think it's important to note with these two that we looked at their consumption profiles before the customers went on the time use tariff, and actually they were both almost identical. So they were almost identical to the control group. So this is, we believe this is a good comparison and quite representative. So we can clearly see there's been some change in behaviour. We've looked at some seasonal analysis on the data. So graph on the left, we've got summer, and we can see that the consumption dropped off in the 4 to 8 p.m. period, but actually increased quite a large amount afterwards. So the time of use customers reduced their peak consumption by 4.5%, whereas the control group actually increased their consumption by 4% in this period. So we can see some reduction from the time of use customers. Overall, both groups in the summer actually increased their consumption by 1% in the summer months. During the winter months, however, the time of use customers reduced their overall consumption by 15%, which was almost identical to the control group, who reduced by 14%. But we can clearly see there's been some significant load shift. So the customers on the time of use tariff have reduced their peak consumption by 23% compared to 12% for our control group. So we are starting to see some interesting results. And this has been reflected through some of the behavioural changes that Durham have picked up through their social science research, which we'll see a little bit later. So we'll continue cutting this data different ways, and we're going to start looking at different customer types and see if that makes any difference as well. So overall, we're starting to see the appeal of time of use to our customers. So we're already starting to integrate our key findings into everyday business innovation. So we've seen, not just in the UK, but in the US as well, with our sister company, Direct Energy, who's already started to offer free Saturdays time of use tariffs. And they've seen some real benefits, both in terms of load shift, but as well with lower churn. So in the UK, we've seen that, we're trying to implement that as quickly as possible. So for our new smart meter customers, we're offering free Saturdays tariff. For the first time, we're looking at a commercial time of use tariff. So this is something that we could potentially bring to market in the UK. Looking at some of the insight we've had from our SME customers, We've now decided to introduce some new business energy insight, some analytics capacity where business customers can go online, they can look at their consumption data, and they can also benchmark this against other businesses of their types. We're also working on industry advocacy. We're working with partners, gathering some evidence, particularly from projects like this, to highlight and help remove regulatory and policy barriers on the wider use of demand-side management. So CLNR's allowed us to explore potential energy services through innovative customer trials, and it's allowed us to explore some new things where maybe the commercial incentives aren't quite there yet. So I showed you earlier the join the dots slide. So we've kind of expanded that on CLNR, and we've started to look at not just smart tariffs that are accurate, but we're also looking at time of use tariffs. We've expanded our smart energy report on this trial, and we've started to look at individual appliance reports, individual low carbon technology reports, and we're going to start seeing how customers respond to that. Do they change their behaviour by getting some additional information? So at British Gas, we're looking at boilers. It's one of the big things we do. We're looking at appliance automation there. This trial, we've started to tinker with some new technologies. So we've looked at smart heat pumps. We've looked at some smart kitchen appliances. We're also looking at in-home balancing. We're trying to do the best for our PV customers, trying to make sure they benefit as much as possible. And we've also taken a bit of a glimpse into the future, looking at storage and demand-side response on a domestic level. So for British Gas, the CLNR project has been really useful and insightful. So what needs to happen for customers to start benefiting from the smart grid? So kind of reflect on, working in this industry, I always find it a bit strange that your average customer is completely none the wiser that energy costs are different at different times of the day, and doing this every day, it always kind of baffles me. And you step back a little bit and you just wonder, okay, well, why is that? This is so obvious. Well, it's because nobody's ever told them. We as the industry have never told customers this. And the reason we've never told them is because there's currently not the right market incentives to do so. So I think if we want customers to start changing their behaviour, using some of these new technologies, there really needs to be a commercial incentive to do so. So for us, the really important thing to kind of enable this market and a catalyst to kind of start innovation is to have cost-reflective pricing signals. We need to be clear what the benefit can be to customers if they take up this demand-side response, if they actually make these actions, and we need to be able to pass this through to customers effectively. We think this will create customer-led, incentivised innovation that's open to all, and we really feel like there needs to be an open competitive market in demand-side management. We think this will lead to the emergence of new competitive market models, and given this is a trial, we've already started to see some new ways that we could work. So ultimately, we think this will give customers more choice in how customers control their energy, which will ultimately lead to a better customer experience in the future and reduced bills. Now, with all of this, there's got to be really clear customer communication and education. And we've seen customers pick up on this stuff relatively quickly. So we're convinced on things like time of use, but we put a lot of effort into doing that, and we need to make sure that the industry communicates to customers in an open, direct way, and where it's clear that they can see the benefits from participating in some of these new technologies. Now, all of this needs to happen with a background of a successful smart metering program, because as we've said, smart meters are really key to a new kind of smart grid connected homes world. So that's a bit of an outline as to how we see this market evolving. I think the technology does exist and we've tested some of it, but we need the right market incentives. So I hope everyone in the room kind of can sympathise with this and can agree that this is a really good way forward. So just to wrap up, what's kind of next from British Gas and CLNR? So we're going to continue to produce some analysis and insight from the trials. We're going to work closely with Durham University and now Newcastle to get the most out of the quite large data sets that we're starting to build up. We're looking to test our direct control and restricted hours propositions that I talked you through earlier on our heat pumps and washing machines, and that's a big job for us this winter, to test those end to end and see how customers respond. We want to test some more innovative communications. We want to see how customers respond to them. Do they still continue with some of the behaviour changes we've seen? And we want to disseminate results and insight across both our business and industry. And most importantly, we want to talk to our customers about their experience. We want to know how they've got on here. So that's what's next. Hopefully I can maybe come back next year and tell you all how it's got on. Hopefully we'll continue with having some success. So thank you very much for your time. Hope you found it interesting. So I believe we have some time for questions.
Yeah, we do. So thank you, Stavros. That was great. And I'm just going to invite Phil back up as well. So the three of us have already spoken this morning. If you've got any questions for any of the three of us, that'll be great. So over to you. Are there any questions? Please.
I'm on a flat tariff and struggle to understand my bill. Can you explain how you communicated on your bills how the tariff affected people's bottom line cost, and maybe also how they can then compare what the tariff has done to their cost and how they can compare it to other tariffs?
Mm-hmm. So with the time of use tariff, the way we explained it kind of over the phone was quite simply, we told them that it's going to be different rates for different times of the day. And listening to the calls, customers kind of already tweaked, and the call centre agents were actually kind of having a bit of a conversation with them about how this could affect their lifestyle, etc. So then we explained kind of clearly the three different rates. And again, we didn't find that customers found that difficult to understand. In terms of the trial kind of in life, customers get the standard British Gas bill, which we've really recently simplified, so they see kind of a clear breakdown of each different time band. And as well as that, I said we're looking to introduce some, as well as the bill, some kind of supplementary smart energy report which will show them on average when they've used their energy during the day and how they compare to other customers on the trial. So I think with that kind of tariff where you can actually control when you use your energy, it's really important to see kind of how other people are doing as well. So that helps.
Hi, question for Stavros. Do you have any feedback yet from the heat pump trials? Because I know from other social housing landlords, they've concluded that it's a technology that doesn't work very well for tenants because it requires a lot of householder engagement. And I just wonder whether the latest generation of heat pumps have perhaps overcome some of those problems.
So I think it's a good point. I think, as I mentioned earlier, there is some education that comes with heat pumps, and we saw those kind of challenges firsthand. But ultimately, after I think some teething problems, the response from the feedback from customers now is the majority of them are really getting on with this new technology, and it's kind of embedded in and defining it okay. So I think it's definitely right to raise, and it kind of emphasises the importance of that transition from whatever legacy heating system they were on previously to heat pumps. And I think if you don't get that right, and if the installation is not done correctly, you can have some problems. So it's really important that you have the quality of the installation, the quality of the advice that goes with it. I think in terms of the new heat pumps, I think it is a very new technology, particularly here for the UK, and it was the first time that we actually installed this in customers' homes. And I think the bigger barriers to that are actually the types of property you can get it in. We had a giant 300 litre store, it's kind of taller than me. So I don't think that technology is quite ready, but the way you use it, kind of what we've seen with heat pumps, is if you use a thermal store or some other kind of energy storage in future, is you can actually implement some of the advanced demand-side management services without actually affecting the thermal comfort of a customer's home. So I think there could be some really good opportunities with heat pumps, but it's a good point, and it's education and a correct install with the correct technology. I think is key.
Hi, Steph. Yeah.
Oh.
Hi.
Hi.
You said that most people weren't concerned about data collection, but with reassurance.
Mm-hmm.
I was just interested to know what kind of reassurance was needed.
So I don't think it was kind of reassurance in that, don't worry about this, don't worry about this. I think it was kind of clearly explaining to them what we were going to do with the data. And I think on this project, the letter that they had clearly explained the project. It clearly explained we had partners, academic partners, and we think that really kind of emphasised as well to customers that their data would be kept kind of safe on this project. And I think they were actually really interested to see the results as well. So we're going to be doing a little bit more research. As I said, we really want to talk to our customers and see what were the key kind of drivers there. But I think on this project in particular, I think they took comfort that it was looking at innovation, and we were working with some trusted partners as well.
Hi, it's Rosie Glynn from Energy UK. Just in terms of the social housing trial, were any time of use tariffs involved in that? Because one of the challenges for the industry will be about ensuring that low-income or vulnerable households are able to benefit from smart metering and home automation. So in terms of that particular channel, were there any time of use tariffs offered or discussed?
At the time of this trial, we actually, with the Go Early Smart Meter rollout program at British Gas, the kind of vulnerable customers weren't kind of first on the list. We had a very limited criteria for customers that we would install smart meters for. So we didn't actually include any vulnerable customers in the time of use tariffs, and that was kind of a conscious decision on the project. We're doing this for the first time. I think it's definitely something we'd like to explore in the future. In terms of the heat pump trials, so we did have some kind of big numbers we were aiming for to get heat pumps with time of use tariffs. But unfortunately, I think that the nature of social housing and the kind of learning curve we had to take customers on kind of really limited the amount of customers we could get on that. We've got a handful of customers with heat pumps and time of use, but I wouldn't say they're really the fuel poor and vulnerable customers. So it's some work we'd like to look at in the future, but it wasn't part of this project.
Hi. On the appliance automation and the direct control trials, you mentioned that the customer can override these events without penalty. Can you remember how often they used that override?
So that's something we desperately want to find out. So that's something we're looking to trial, and that's kind of one of the key learnings is do customers use this at all? You know, are they compelled to use this technology at all? So that's one of the key findings. We don't have that information right yet, but definitely one hopefully we'll be able to tell you next time.
Okay, I think that's it for now. I think we're into coffee break now, so thanks for your attention, and we'll see you shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much.